So recent rumors have been surfacing over across the pond in your all's backyard that Ferrari is preparing to offer a $40 million contract to Lewis Hamilton. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton has not re-signed with Mercedes. This was reported by the Daily Mail. So say what you want about that publication. What did you guys make of these rumors? Could there be any truth behind them?
It's possible. Ferrari may be preparing to offer Lewis Hamilton a deal. I think when people read that, they kind of got the idea that either Lewis was already going to Ferrari or was in deep contract negotiations with Ferrari. And from what I understand, they're not at that stage yet. It still seems very much like Lewis is entirely intent on staying with Mercedes. I did an interview with him at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and he talked about how, sure, he's thought about driving for Ferrari before. He's even thought about going back to McLaren and ending his career there. But every time he gets into that thought process, he just comes back to the idea of staying at Mercedes and wanting to work with them, continue to work with them, win another championship with them, work with the Mercedes brand after he retires from Formula One as well. So beyond this contract that he's currently negotiating with Mercedes, and he is actually negotiating a contract with Mercedes right now, he's looking at where he goes after that. But there's nothing stopping Ferrari approaching Lewis during this period, believing that maybe there's an opportunity for him to go there. And it's not unusual for teams to be in touch with driver managers, sometimes the drivers themselves, but often just the manager, to understand what the situation is. Is the driver available? Is there any interest away from the team they're at the moment? And so that bit is possible. I have no idea if it's true or not, but that could be where this story has come from. On the other hand, the way the story is written, $40 million contract and all this kind of stuff, that's roughly what we think Lewis is on right now. Well, the same publication, the Daily Mail, have written that Lewis was being offered $65 million by Mercedes earlier in the year. So, I don't know how the maths works on that. And the idea that $40 million from Ferrari would lure him away, because the other factor here being that, is Ferrari really a better place to be than Mercedes if you're coming towards the end of the career and all you want is a world championship? Obviously, the best place to win world championships at the moment is Red Bull, but Lewis isn't going to Red Bull. So if he was looking at it purely from a selfish, where do I win a championship point of view, would Ferrari make sense in that sense? Probably not. If he's looking at it from a where he wants to be, where he feels at home, Mercedes is clearly the answer. The only thing that I guess could get him to go there is if he had always wanted to go to Ferrari, but he said on a number of occasions that he is not worried about finishing his career at Ferrari. He's not worrying about having a career and not driving for Ferrari at any time. So it doesn't really add up. But it's a good story, isn't it? Going into Monaco weekend, one of the best drivers in the world with the most famous team, let the rumors flow.
I would say the same as well. I think everything Laurence said is spot on. I think one thing that's interesting as well about this is, even when you kind of get beyond all the numbers and what could or couldn't be true, is I just can't see Lewis and Ferrari being a fit. I think Ferrari's still in a bit of a state of flux, with everything going on behind the scenes. But one of the things that Lewis has always loved about Mercedes is that Toto Wolff and Niki Lauda, when they sat him down in 2012, one of the big things they said to him, as well as the fact that our car's going to be pretty great from 2014 onwards, they gave him that freedom to be what he couldn't be at McLaren, which was just to be himself, to wear what he wants, to go to a lot more things away from racing. He didn't have to be in that corporate mold that Ron Dennis wanted him. And if you think about Ferrari as a company, as a team, I can't see them giving him the same freedom. If you see, Charles and Carlos, I know they're very, very popular, but they're very much about the party line. I mean, think about the amount of times last year Carlos came out and said, I don't know why everyone's making fun of our strategy. Our strategy is, there's nothing wrong with our strategy. It was like, well, clearly there is something wrong. And Charles, even when he's clearly been upset, he's been very careful about what he said. And I think that the two of those guys suit that corporate mold at Ferrari very, very well. I just don't see that working for Lewis. He's at the stage of his career where he doesn't need to do that, doesn't need to play that game. I think, like Laurence said, home for him is Mercedes. So I'd be really surprised if he joined this Ferrari team. It'd be different if Ferrari was, clearly the team that could challenge Red Bull. But I don't see that being the case. So who knows? I also couldn't, stand it up or knock it down as a story. But a lot of people I spoke to in Formula One, who could have known something were like, I haven't heard anything about this, but I think everybody agreed with what Laurence said. Like, can you imagine Lewis going to Ferrari? It would be an amazing story. Just can't quite see it happening. I also think there's some stuff going on here. If Ferrari has leaked that, are they putting pressure on Carlos Sainz? Are they trying to get Leclerc to sign a new deal? There's all kinds of things. It's the same in a lot of sports, isn't it? When these stories come out, you also have to think of, well, who does this benefit, this story being out here? So I think there's a lot else going on as well.
That's a fair point. And it's a hedge, right? I mean, you write this article and you can say, well, they did prepare an offer, but then they never ended up putting it in front of him, or they put it in front of him and actually Lewis said no. So you can write it and garner all the attention and the clicks, and yet nothing actually has to come to fruition, and it doesn't hurt you as a writer or a publication for putting it out. It's just driving eyeballs. It's interesting you bring up Carlos Sainz. Logistically here and contractually, both Carlos and Charles are under contract through next season, correct? So this would be a case where if something were to happen and Lewis Hamilton in some semblance decides he wants to drive Ferrari, they just have to buy Carlos Sainz. I'm assuming it would be Carlos Sainz. They just have to buy Carlos Sainz out of his contract at that point.
Or Charles goes the other way.
That was one. Yeah. The other theory within the article was that Leclerc would go to Mercedes and therefore there would be almost like a straight swap. I mean, even if Ferrari were considering, I just can't see why Ferrari would do that, because you're ending up with a driver who's very good in Lewis Hamilton, but they know right now they probably won't have the car in the next couple of years realistically to make the most of that. Whereas Leclerc, they've got potentially long term. He has this deep relationship with Ferrari, so that side of it didn't really seem to make any sense. And then the other theory within the article was exactly what you said. You basically give Sainz a push, and Sainz has been underperforming recently. So, as Nate said, that could be a reason why this story has emerged right now. But either way, it just doesn't. It's kind of not worth getting into those details because I just cannot see it happening.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content plus live streaming, make sure to subscribe to ESPN Player.